Everyone trashes junk wax. We're led to believe that the cards of the 80s and 90s are garbage. That we're living in this golden age of sports and trading cards. That nothing's better than it is today. There are bigger hits, better chases. It's more exciting. Nobody wants junk wax. It was overproduced. The quality was terrible. They were mishandled. There's bad corners. There's scratches. There was gum. There's stains. Everyone says modern cards are better. And I'm here to say that I think that narrative is completely backwards. Now, look, the big knock on junk wax has always been that it was overproduced, right? That was always the knock. They made too many of them. It's overproduced. Let me let you in on a little reality. The cards today are more produced than ever before. Topps Baseball, 2026 Topps Baseball that just came out. I was reading an article on the print run. And for the base cards, there's over 1 million copies of every base card produced. That's insane. That is an insane print run. So if you get a base rookie, there are 1 million copies of that card produced. Now, let's say that 5% of those get a PSA 10. I think 5% is a reasonable number with the print conditions and quality controlled these days. 5% means 50,000 rookie cards will be a PSA 10. That's insane. It's absolutely insane. Now, let's look at one of the most overproduced cards in history. The 1989 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. card. They printed that card for years. That card was printed into the early 90s. They sold that card to hobby shops for years. And I know this. I know people that owned hobby shops back in the late 80s. Multiple people have told me this. That they were buying those cards for 10 cents a piece. They could buy them by the thousands if they wanted. That card, it was crazy. They had full sheets of that card that were printed. They had giant sets that were just Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck #1. That is, like, I stayed away from that card for years because I'm like, well, there's so many of them. Like, there's so many. Do you know how many PSA 10 versions of that card there are? 4,000. Just over 4,000. But that's the most overproduced card, right? There's 1 million new cards coming out this year of every single player in Topps. It's insane. The print run these days are absolutely nuts. I looked up, just for argument's sake, I looked up a 2018 Donruss rated rookie Luka Doncic rated rookie. In a PSA 10, the population is over 12,000. There are 12,000 PSA 10 versions of that card. And now look, that's a base card. I get that. But that's over double how many PSA 9s exist. There are just over 6,000 PSA 9s. There's over 12,000 PSA 10s. And again, the most overproduced card in history, that 89 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. card, there's only 4,000 PSA 10 versions of that exist. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, and earlier than that, you know, there was 3, maybe 4 sets that a player might come in. You know, you had Topps, you had Upper Deck, you had Flair. Maybe there was Score, Donruss, Pinnacle popped in and out. You know, sets came in and out, but there wasn't many. Especially in the 80s. You know, the early 80s, you had Topps, Donruss, Flair. Then Upper Deck popped in. Then you saw Score and Pinnacle. But, I mean, there wasn't really much. Leaf showed up. But for the majority of the junk wax era, especially late 80s, it was Topps, Donruss, Flair, and then later Upper Deck. Now, you had 1 rookie card per set. So let's just go 89, you know, Ken Griffey Jr. He wasn't in Topps. He was in the Topps traded. But he was in Upper Deck. He was in Donruss. He was in Flair. So really, in 89 of the base sets, he's in 3 sets. He has 3 rookie cards. That's the flagship card for those sets. You know, people look for Ken Griffey Jr. in those sets. And when people ask about the Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, they think of the Upper Deck one because it's an iconic card. What card is someone going to look at today in 20 years and say, in 2026, this was the iconic card? In 2025, what was the iconic card? Can you tell me what the iconic card was, in the last 15, 20 years? I couldn't. There's so many. The variations have gotten out of hand. I mean, look, there's iconic one-of-one cards that come up. You got those logo mans. Those are cool. But there's only one of those. The beauty about junk wax, and I use that term lightly, the beauty of the cards from the late 70s, the 80s, the 90s. There were chase cards that you could get. There were grail cards that you would go after. People go crazy still to this day for 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle rookie card. It's not even really his rookie. The 51 Bowman's his real rookie. But 52 Topps, that was his iconic rookie card. To this day, that's one of the biggest grail cards and biggest grail chases of collectors of all ages. The majority of the people that want that card weren't even alive in 1952. But it's iconic. It's a flagship card. That's the card. There's a history behind it. We've lost that. That is gone. There's so many different variations and different sets that are out there now that nothing is unique because everything is quote unquote unique. Everything's special. If everything's special, nothing is special. And then the items that are actually truly special are so rare that no one else can have them. The collectors are being priced out of this market and we're being left behind. And we have nothing to look back on in this era to say this is the card that people wanted. There's no 89 Upper Deck Griffey. There's no 1980 Topps Ricky Henderson. There's no 52 Mantle. There's no 86 Flair Jordan. Wemby's as hot as it gets. His cards are insane. What's his iconic rookie card? What's an iconic rookie card of his in 5 years you can go chase with your kids? 10, 15 years down the line, what card are you chasing of his? There's so many. Now, look, there's cool inserts. You've got downtowns. Downtowns are super hot. And maybe that's the future. You have those incredible inserts, downtowns and kabooms and uptowns and all that stuff. And maybe that's what people will look back on and chase. But there's no real card that defines this era. And that's sad. People knock junk wax because it was overproduced. But I think that there's too many variations these days. I think we're overproducing in variations. There's way too many products. There's way too many versions. You've got retail exclusive boxes. You've got blaster boxes. You've got retail exclusive retail packs and retail boxes. You've got hobby boxes. You've got jumbo boxes. You've got mega boxes. And in all of those sets, you get different odds and different variations and different chases. Fanatics has their own specific blaster boxes. Target gets theirs. Walmart has theirs. And each one has a different chase. So with that, it's fragmented because there's all these different variations of the same card. It's insane. There's too many. The value is spread too thin because even though the cards may look better, they're not as special. And here's another fun fact. 1 of 1 doesn't mean anything anymore. Because a 1 of 1 on a card doesn't mean it's truly a 1 of 1. It's like if you had an eBay 1 of 1, if you know what that means. Every card on eBay is special because it's your card versus somebody else's. But I mean, look at like Leaf. Leaf has 1,000 different 1 of 1s, and all they do is just change a print of something on a card, and now it's a different card. It's 1 of 1. Topps does it. There's a million different variations of Topps. Then you get printing plates, a printing plate 101, but they have so many different variations of cards. There's a bunch of different printing plates. There's no scarcity anymore. You know, the big chases like the downtowns and the kabooms and all that stuff, they're cool, but they're not even numbered. Like, you can get those. That's one per case. I mean, how many cases do they produce a year? Millions. There's tons of those out there. So while we have this reality that those are like the most expensive and iconic and elusive cards, they're not. Now, there are very rare cards that are released. You know, Tom Brady had that 2023 Bowman draft card where they had him on the Expos and he signed it. You know, if football doesn't work out, there's always or if baseball doesn't work out, there's always football. And that's still a big chase card because I don't think that's ever been found. But that's cool and that's rare and that's unique and that's a massive chase. But that's the only one. So, you know, there's that illusion out there of the one-on-ones. And you have to be cautious with it because there's a lot of them out there. And some of them aren't going to be worth anything. Some will. But there's a beauty in that vintage wax. Because you know when a card's valuable. A Joe Montana rookie card and a PSA 10 is a valuable card. And it always will be. There's not different variations of his rookie. John Elway's rookie card's always going to be valuable. Mickey Mantle, always valuable. Any of those cards from back in the day, that's it. Like, those are the cards that people want, and they will always be collectible and always be valuable. But it also gives you something to chase. And here's another reality of the junk wax era. Who handled those cards when they were kids? Kids. We passed them around. We flung them around. They went in and out of binders, in and out of top loaders, went from one hand to another. Some kids threw them in bicycle spokes and made motorcycle sounds. Other kids would fling them against the wall. I used to create like baseball teams and basketball teams and shuffle them around. Like, they were handled by kids. Those cards, for the most part, aren't in great condition because they were cherished and they were used. The cards weren't perfect. Today they have quality control, and you know the majority of the cards all look the same. And that's how you end up with cards with 40,000 PSA 10s because they're all perfect. Back in the day, there were production errors, there were misprints, there were errors. Cards had bad centering, bad edges, bad corners, miscuts. They were stored improperly. There was gum in them. They were sealed with wax. The wax affected the card. The gum, especially in older packs, sometimes seeps through. It gets moldy. Ugh. It's gross. But even though those cards may have been, quote unquote, overproduced, they're rarer than people think because getting those in a PSA 10 is so hard that it makes them special and unique. But you can still get a variation of that card in a poorer grade. You can still get that card. And I think that's what's missing today. Like on the Wax Hunters stream on Whatnot, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow at the Wax Hunters on Whatnot. You know, we open boxes from the late 70s all the time. We've done 78 and 79 basketball recently. 78 basketball is an interesting one because it's a 132 card set, and almost half of that set in a PSA 10 is worth over $500. That's crazy. Actually, I think it was something even crazier, like over 30 cards. So a third of the set in a PSA 10 is worth over $1,000 each. Can you imagine that if a set came out today and every card in a PSA 10 was over $1,000? That set would be unobtainable. People would be going nuts for it. But people ignore the vintage stuff because nobody wants it. But they do. If you can get in a high grade, they want it. In 1979 Topps Basketball, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, his card, that's not a rookie. There's nothing unique about the card except for the fact that it's a low pop 10 number. That's it. It's worth almost $20,000. Ricky Henderson's rookie is almost $200,000 right now because there's so few PSA 10s. Same with Ozzie Smith, Jerry Rice. Those are all six-figure cards. Now, you can hit those cards out of packs. It may not be a 10, but you can hit it. And then you at least have a variation of something that's unique. Now you have a million cards produced of one card, and there are variations and different short prints and numbers, and I know that exists. So the card may not be exactly the same. But back in the day, you could get the exact card. Like I have a Mickey Mantle card that if it was in a PSA 10, it would be worth 20 million. But it's in like a 3, so it's worth like 600. But it's the same exact card that's worth $1 million. It's just not in as good of a condition. I just think that we've lost something along the way where you don't have that cool iconic card that you can chase or that you can remember that really like identifies with that time period. So I feel bad for the kids today because they don't have that cool card that they can look back on. I'll tell you another thing. The cards in the 80s, even the junk wax cards, they're all going up. Bo Jackson's rookie card has doubled year over year. Ken Griffey Jr.'s cards doubled year over year. A lot of their cards are going up. And part of that is the collectors from that time period are getting to an age where they have a little bit more money and they want to have the best versions and variations of the cards that they collected as kids. Part of it is people are looking back and saying Bo Jackson was a hell of an athlete. He was a tremendous football player. He was a very good baseball player. His cards in both sets, in both sports, are going up, up, up. He was a cultural figure back in the day, and people are starting to remember that. That carries value. Nostalgia carries value. It's a big part of this hobby. There's that emotional factor that goes into it. You can tie back those memories to when you were a kid, and that means something. With modern cards, I mean, it's all about money. It's all about flipping it. You go to a card show these days, you see kids going table to table selling their cards. When we were kids, we cherished them. Now it's a commodity. They're flipping, trying to make the most money possible to get the biggest cards. And I get that. I would do that too if that was available to me when I was younger. But there's a piece that's missing, and there's that emotional attachment that we've lost. But let me tell you something. Nostalgia buyers, they pay more. They spend more. They drive the price of those cards up. People talk about football. The football cards are always popular. Quarterback rookies are always very good. But think about this when you look at wide receivers and running backs. Those don't hold up. Not usually. Jamal Charles was one of the best running backs in football. You can get his rookie card for probably $5. You probably get an auto rookie for 10. Maybe less, depending on where you go. Chris Carter was one of the best wide receivers in football for years. I bought his rookie card at a card store the other day in a 9 for $8. It's crazy. There's no respect on certain players and certain things that they mean to you. But as you get older, people may collect them again. You get those niche collectors that want to have those cards. But you think about the cards today. I mean, Michael Penix, his cards went way up. He got hurt. They went way down. It's just, I don't know. I feel like we're losing that emotional attachment. We forget about players too easily sometimes. But with vintage, they're already minted. Those cards are already established. If a card that was valuable 10 years ago in the 80s is still going to be valuable today from the 80s, even more so. And it's just going to keep going up. But cards from 3 to 5 years ago, they may already be down and they may never get back to the prices that you paid for them or that you may want them. And that's why when you're in this hobby, you should never be in this to make money. It's like watches. I'm a big watch collector. I love watches. But I never buy a watch to resell it because most watches will go down in value. But I'll appreciate the watch. But if I'm buying it to resell it, unless I'm buying a Rolex, which I'm not going to do because they're crazy expensive and you can't get them, I'm going to lose money. And that's fine because I'm collecting it. That's why we always say collectors first. We're for the hobby because we're collecting. You can't worry about value. Vintage also they're not producing more of it. Modern cards, they make so much of it. Vintage, the supply is flattening out. If there's only so many boxes you can open of certain products, there's Look at the stuff from the 70s. You can't get that anymore. It's so hard. 60s, even harder. 50s, good luck. I think I've seen maybe 3 examples of 50s wax in my life in person. I know it exists, but it's not common. So the supply curve is definitely heavily on the modern side, very, very scarce on the vintage side. Even the junk wax stuff is getting more and more expensive. 88 Donruss baseball, which is my prime example of the worst of the junk wax era. There's nothing great in it. I used to be able to buy that box for less than $10, not even a few years ago. It's at like $40 now. Who the hell is paying $40 for that? People are, because that's what the price is at now. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, as these things get older, there's value to it. The nostalgia factor kicks in. But the old stuff, it's always going to be worth more. It may not seem as exciting and as sexy as the new stuff. I get that. But there is way more value to it than people think. Modern has those crazy spikes. You know, the big hits drive the hype. You got all the social media talking about all the big hits. But I would take vintage over the modern stuff any day of the week. Yes, junk wax printed too many cards. But modern prints too many cards and too many variations. And I will leave you with this. If I'm building for a long-term collection, I will go vintage over modern every single time. And if you question that, again, I just ask you, think about it. What is the iconic card of the last 10 to 15 years that's defined this era of collecting? I can't think of one. Maybe you can, and you can let me know. But I'll still go chase that 86 Flair Jordan every single day of the week. Anyway, this is Greg, your wax hunter, thanking you for letting me be just a small part of your day. I look forward to chatting with you again. Stay classy, stay waxy. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow wherever you're listening to this. And I will chat with you again soon. Thanks so much.